Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo. Last week we had made it as far as Hampton, Virginia, and we were very lucky or very thankful to be out of Chesapeake Bay. This week we head down through Norfolk, and that is where we get into some severe timing issues. There were some mechanical problems going on in this area, and there are a lot of bridges and locks and timing that has to be done. So this was a little bit of a nightmare as we headed down through Chesapeake, Virginia, and we made our way all the way down the ICW through Currituck Sound and into North River, where we set up to stage our way across Albemarle Sound. I think that's about as far as we'll make it this week, so we might as well go ahead and get right into it. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. When leaving Hampton, Virginia, you do have to choose the right time to make your way down to Norfolk. This area is very dynamic, it's very confused, the seas are always very choppy no matter what the weather is like. To the east you're basically exposed to the ocean via the entrance to Chesapeake Bay. To the west you have the James River, and then to the south you have the Elizabeth River. And all three of those things are converging in the area where you're going through. So it's always a choppy, dicey mess. And we went through on a day that was relatively calm. I think that the winds were around 10 knots. We were able to use some of the wind to get down to Norfolk, which was nice. And it was choppy, as you can see, but I think this was probably the calmest trip we had ever had from Hampton down to Norfolk, which was wonderful. It was actually a very pleasant day. It was very nice. We did have to dodge a couple of dredges, but beyond that, it was a very nice trip down to Norfolk. Going through downtown Norfolk is an absolute treat. I've made entire videos on downtown Norfolk before. I'll actually list one down below, but it's absolutely wonderful down there. It's all lit up at night. It is just wonderful. It's basically a 12 to 15 mile long shipyard. There are ships in dry dock being constructed. There are ships in wet dock. They're building aircraft carriers. They're building warships. It's just an absolutely fascinating place. And one of the more popular anchorages in downtown Norfolk is Hospital Point. That is a very popular place to stay. There is limited space there. I think you can probably get maybe 15 boats in there. And it does stay deep up to shore, so I did dip my nose in there just to see if I could get out of the wind and get secured back in a decent spot in there. And I was going to stay there one night, but I decided not to. I don't like anchoring in less than 7 feet at low tide, and it was just a little bit too thin. So I decided to go down. There was another anchorage that I wanted to check out. It did look a little bit sketchy, but I knew the next morning I was going to have to get up super early to make all of the timing work as I went through the Great Bridge area. And I knew I'd have to get up at around 1:30 and leave around 3:30, and if I could get another 4 miles further south, that would get me 1 more hour of sleep that night. So I decided to check out a little bit of a sketchy anchorage at Money Point. And as I was going down from Norfolk to Money Point, which is just north of the Gilmerton Lift Bridge, there is a train bridge there. I think it's the Norfolk Southern 7 Bridge. I might have that wrong, but it's a lift bridge for a train that goes through. And as I came through Norfolk, there were a bunch of boats waiting there. And the bridge was down. Obviously you can't get through. It's only like maybe a 6-foot clearance. So we were all waiting there. And when they finally did lift the bridge, all of the boats went through. And as I was going through the bridge, right before I entered it, the bridge started coming down. So I was very nervous about that. My knees were knocking. I was silently crapping my pants. It was not a good situation, but I did make it through the bridge before it closed. It closed behind me. It was a new fear unlocked. I had never thought a bridge would close when you're going through it, but yeah, so now every time I go through a railroad bridge, I'm constantly staring at it to make sure it isn't closing on me. And here we are arriving at Money Point. It was a little bit more of a precarious anchorage than I anticipated, so I had to search around for a little while to find the absolute best spot to drop the anchor. After spending the night at Money Point, and here is Money Point, you can see why this was a little bit of a sketchy anchorage. And the reason why I'm going back to the iPad here is this next section was an absolute logistical nightmare, and I kind of want to walk through it with you guys. So Money Point was a little bit of a sketchy anchorage. I was able to drop the anchor right up in the shallow spot here, and then I hung out over here pretty much all night. And you know, I thought originally I was going to come up in here and I would be able to anchor, but there are two barges. One is sunk and the other one is rafted up to it, so you can't make it up into here to anchor. So that was my original plan, but I ended up anchoring and just kind of floating around out here all night, and it did work out. So the reason why this next section was an absolute logistical nightmare is if we continue down the Intracoastal Waterway, the first thing we have here is the Gilmerton Lift Bridge. Now this bridge is closed between 6:30 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. and that's for rush hour traffic, so they won't open during that time. So in order to make it through there, I needed to get there before 6:30 a.m. And right next to it is the Norfolk Southern number 7 bridge, and that it's a total crapshoot. You never know if it's going to be up or down. If a train is coming, it's down. If there's no train, it's up. So that one you have no control over. So heading south, the next obstacle we come up against is the Great Bridge Lock. Now, the problem this year with getting through the Great Bridge Lock and then a half a mile later is the Great Bridge Bridge is the Great Bridge Bridge was having mechanical issues this year. So normally it would open every hour at the top of the hour, so at 7, 8, 9, and so on and so forth. But it was only opening on the even hours. And it coordinates with the Great Bridge Lock. So if you're traveling southbound, you have to get to the lock about a half an hour before the bridge opening, so you can get through the lock and up to the bridge by the time it opens. After that, we had to stop over here at Atlantic Yacht Basin for fuel and water. That was going to take us 2 hours. And then from there, we had to head down. There's another railroad bridge here. There again, you have no control over it. Either it's up or it's down, and if it's down, it can screw up your entire day. So that's just luck of the draw. If we keep going, we've got the Centerville Turnpike Bridge, and this one is closed in the morning from 6:30 to 8:30. So essentially, the first opening of the day for this bridge is at 8:30 a.m. And let me turn down the radio. And then from there, 4 miles later, is the North Landing Bridge. And this bridge opens at the top and the bottom of the hour, so at the half hour mark and then at the top of the hour, so 7, 7:30, 8, 8:30, 9, 9:30, and so on. So that's that bridge's opening schedule. So in order to make all of this work, and then from there I had to go through the North River and then down through Currituck Sound, which is one of my 2 least favorite places on the ICW, and then to make it through Coin Jock and into the North River. That is just to make it from Great Bridge, Virginia, through to the North River is a full day. And that's not including the 2-hour stop at Atlantic Yacht Basin, making it from our anchorage at Money Point all the way down to Great Bridge. So this day was going to be a nightmare to figure out. And the way it worked out was this here point was so this entire stretch here, the lock, the bridge, and then the Centerville Turnpike Bridge, that was our bottleneck. That was our main pivot point for all of our scheduling for the day. So I knew I had to make this 6 o'clock opening at the Great Bridge since it only opened on the even hours. And that gave me a 2-hour window to stop at Atlantic Yacht Basin to get fuel and water, and then I could make it down to the Centerville Turnpike Bridge by their 8:30 opening. And that was crucial to make it there by 8:30 so I could make it all the way to North River before nightfall. So I knew I had to make it to the Great Bridge Bridge by 6 a.m. And to do that, I had to be excuse me, I had to be in the Great Bridge Lock by 5:30 a.m. And to get to the Great Bridge Lock, I had to leave our anchorage at Money Point, which is up here, at 3:30 a.m. So in order to leave there at 3:30 a.m., I had to get up at 1:30 a.m. So I got up at 1:30 a.m. I made it through the Gilmerton Lift Bridge. As fate would have it, a barge was coming through right as I was going, so I didn't even have to request an opening. They were opening already, and we got lucky. The railroad bridge was up, so we could go through there. Now, in some of this footage, you will notice there are like little starbursts on all the lights. You know, every morning I check the camera, or I'm sorry, I check the oil and the raw water strainer and that kind of stuff on the engine. I think I must have had a little bit of oil on my thumb because I always wipe off the lens. So I think that's why you're seeing that little starburst on all of the lights. Is there must have been a little smudge on the lens there, so I apologize for that. But anyway, so we made it through the Gilmerton Lift Bridge by 3:30. Then we made it down to the lock by 5:30. And getting there that early in the morning, you know you're going to have to tie up yourself. So single-handing, it can be tricky, but I'm getting a lot better at it, which is good. And then going through, we made it to the Great Bridge by 6. Then I came through to the Atlantic Yacht Basin, where I tied up by myself again. The fuel dock attendant was out in the yard, which is not uncommon that early in the morning. So that was fine. So I started getting my water, and then as soon as he showed up, then I got my fuel, and we were back on the road by 8. So then we steamed up to the Centerville Turnpike Bridge. Oop, that's not it. It's up here. So I made it up to the Centerville Turnpike Bridge by 8:30 for their opening. And then it's 4 miles down to the North Landing Bridge, and I dropped the hammer and I made it to the North Landing Bridge by 9:30 a.m. for their opening there. And then we made it all the way down through the North River, through Currituck Sound, through Coinjock, and into the North River by around 4:30 p.m. So it was an extremely long day. A little bit of a logistical nightmare. And we were extremely grateful when we got there. It's the longest day we'd ever put in. And Linus, Linus wants to put in his 2 cents. What do you think, big guy? What do you think, big hoop? That was a long day, wasn't it, bud? Yeah, it was. Are you ready to come in, buddy? So when we finally made it to the North River, we did put a pin in that day, and that was, yeah, that was a long day. So I'm gonna tend to Big Hoob. And that's all we have time for this week. I would like to give a massive shout out to my Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I would not make these videos. I've contemplated quitting a few times, but thanks to your guys' support, I've decided to continue on. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Eli Sackett, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, Matthew Spotton, Kristen Ashton and Peter Allen, Natalie Linehan, and Tricia and Robert Johnson. Thank you guys so very much for your support. It really does mean the world to me. I wouldn't do this without you, so thank you very much. I do have one legacy patron member. Her name is Joan Linbo, and unfortunately she has passed on, but she lives on in our hearts forever. We really miss you, Joan. If you are interested in joining our Patreon crew, there is a link in the description down below where you can join Patreon. It's absolutely free. You don't have to pay for anything, and you'll get half of the bonus content for free. If you do want to join and throw us a couple of bucks, we won't turn you down. If you do like our videos, please do like, comment, and subscribe. That really helps us out with the algorithm and all this other garbage. I don't know how it works, but they say it helps, so hit that thumbs up button. Alrighty, I hope y'all are well, and we'll see you next week.